Ayana, so your artist statement was like super calming to read, right? All about being in the moment and realizing what's in front of you and not being overwhelmed or going 100 miles an hour, but rather being still and noticing. That's what I got from that, is that you want us to be where we are so that we're noticing what's around us. And then with that, our photography or our sense of being will be better. So I thought that was really beautiful. And then you kind of take us on a tour of your island. So let's look at these technically to get started. So you keep your ISO nice and low for all of these. They're between 100 and 400. You don't jump above that, and there's no reason to, because you're shooting all of these images outside and it's pretty sunny outside. You're using longer focal lengths. I noticed that. So from 75 to 200, so you're not getting close to your subjects necessarily, but you're zooming in to your subjects. So there's positive and negatives to that. One, it's good to be moving close to your subject. And I think that is more in line with what you're talking about, to like sit and be with what's around you and take that in. And as you're taking it in, showing that in your photograph, that's going to happen more so if you're closer to your subject and you're surrounded by it. So in that case, I would say it's going to work better to use a wider angle lens. So using like a 50 mm lens so that you're actually moving your body to where you want to be photographing. But there's something that's advantageous about a longer lens. So it compresses things and it makes us look at a scene differently. So if we look at this image, you shot this at 90 mm, which is a longer image or a longer lens. Anything over 50 is going to be a longer lens. But when we get to 100 to 200, then we're speaking about quite a bit of zoom. And when that happens, you're compressing everything in the scene. So what we're seeing from the background to the foreground are closer in space. So that it compresses that area. So it's an interesting approach for photographing sort of these landscapes that you're doing, because it's making things feel more close together or more closed in. Or here, the plant's going to look closer to the mural in the background. Here you're using the 75, so there's not as much space between these benches. So it's just something for you to pay attention to. And when you're shooting with a longer lens, to also remember that you have to have a faster shutter speed, and you do that in all of these. So if you're shooting with a 100 mm lens, you need to have a shutter speed that's 1/125th of a second. Or here you're at 200 mm, but you're shooting it at 1/500th of a second. So you're always working within the means of what your lens is able to do if you're going to hand hold. Your images, the first 3 images lack a bit of focus. And when you're using a longer lens, your aperture is going to have an even shallower depth of field. I don't think there's motion blur in any of these images, but it does seem that you missed your point of focus. So here, it seems like you're focused a little bit more in front of him than on his face. So his forearm looks like it's in better focus than his face is. So it's just a little more sensitive when you're using that longer lens and you have a wider aperture. Here it looks like the ground here is in focus, but the boys start to fall out of focus. And then again here it looks like the rocks in the foreground are in focus, but the horse and the kid on the horse, this is out of focus. So just something for you to be aware of moving forward is that longer lens is going to give you a shallower depth of field. The light in all of your images, you're using just midday light. Sometimes it's brighter, as we see the bright shadows in the background here, and sometimes it's a little more overcast, or maybe it's shaded by the trees, but here it's not quite as bright. But they're all shot kind of in this midday. Let's just go through them. Sounds like you just drove through the island for a day. Yeah, so they're kind of all midday between 10 o'clock and maybe 2 o'clock in the afternoon. The most appealing compositions that you have would be this image, as you're using the lines of the road guiding us back to watch these kids as they're riding down the street. This is a nice composition also, as we have to kind of move through the image. So we have the plants on the top here giving us a sense of place within the frame. Then we follow the line back here and we follow the color through the image. And then we kind of find this bird here. So this is a nice composition kind of guiding us through the frame. Oops. And then I find this to be an interesting composition also, as we're layering things on top of each other. So you have the mural, and that's the first thing that we're going to look at, is that mural of this woman. And then we have the plant, so adding that natural element. Then we have the lamp here, and we have the kind of umbrellas that are up on the ceiling here. So there's some layering happening here, and we kind of move through each of those items to find that. Well, first I think we find the portrait of the woman, and then we move through these other items. That gives us a sense of place and where we are. And then I think it's fun to think of the images that start and end your series. So here, I feel like this guy's just inviting us into your island. He seems so welcoming, so happy, and he's just inviting us to enjoy this journey. And then here you finish with this image, this one love, one heart, one island, one community. Just the love, it feels like, that you have for this place and that the place has for you. So it's a really nice journey that you take us on here. And you start off including people in it, but then we're kind of left to move through the spaces on our own without anyone else. So it's like we're welcomed in, and then we kind of explore on our own. So I think that works really well. Anyway, nice job on your series. Let's just take one last look here. Yeah, so this is a pretty interesting image as well. That repetition, use of line and shape works well here as it did in this image. So continue to look at that as you're out there photographing. Nice job this semester. Let me know if you have questions about anything else.